read some more of Follow Me to Hell's true story, um, based on Western of the Texas battle from the Alamo, from Mexico, and on to the Texas Rangers. And that's what we're going to read more of it. And that's what we're going to do as soon as I get my channel on YouTube channel content up here so I can see. Okay, so here we go. He formed a corporation of venture capitalists to bring his idea to market. The patent arm manufacturing company, the Patterson, was chartered by the New Jersey legislation. In its first year, Colt Company made more than 1,000 weapons. But after the Panic of 1837, the company underwriters were lubricant funded to the new machinery that Colt needed to make interchange both parts, so he would be back on the road to raise money. This journey included demonstration for the military, but passed on purchasing the weapons. Worse, Colt imperiled his own company by reckless spending using corporate funds to buy expensive wardrobe clothing, using corporate funds to buy trial luxurious gifts and potential clients, including fancy dinners. Colt thought getting potential customers is the number one to generate more sales. The company was briefly saved by the war against uh, the Indians, Seminole Indians in Florida, which provided the first sale of Colt weapons. But ultimately, he proved to be a better inventor than a businessman. In 1843, the Patterson plant closed and the public auction was held in New York City. Now, Colt turned to selling underwater electrical detonators and waterproof cable, his own invention. Teaming up with Samuel Morse, creator of Morse code, to run the telegraph line under lakes, rivers, bays, and attempt to do so under the Atlantic Ocean. However, hey Mustang, hey Douglas, how you doing? However, back in 1839, the Republic of Texas had purchased almost 200 handguns for Texas Navy. When Sam Houston disbanded the Navy 4 years later, Captain Jack Hayes, armed with his company of Texas Rangers with surplus stock of the pistols. The repeating handgun became very popular, with the Rangers. Happy Friday, everyone. Yes. Believe that the sustained firepower would give them an advantage when fighting the Indians. In addition to a rifle, each Rangers now had two fire shot Colt Pattersons, allowing the shooters to take aim and fire 10 shots in about 40 seconds. The Comanche couldn't be affected in delivering the death, too. Each warrior carried a lance and had a bow and arrow. Previously, he could send several arrows on their way while his opponent was trying to reload, and that, compared to the strong horsemanship, had spelled doom for many Texans, including the Rangers. But in June 1844, frontier combat changed. My man, advance no dismay. Walker Creek, in the tributaries of the Guadalupe River, Some 50 miles north of Sajin, on June 8th, 1844, Jack Hayes' company was on patrol. Two of the members were Robert Gillespie and Simon Walker. Later was the 27-year-old Maryland native who had enlisted in Washington City Volunteers in 1836. Now, the Creek Indian campaigned in Alabama. The following year, he worked as a scout in Florida, and by 1842, he was a member of the Texan army that had repelled General Wool. He survived by minor expedition and the Black Bean episode by remaining as a prisoner until escaping. Apparently, his thirst for adventure had not been quenched because as soon as Sam Walker got back to Texas, he joined Hayes' company. The Rangers were using the creek as watering hole when one of them guarding the rear caught sight of approaching Comanches. There were 10 of them, and Hayes observed that after being spotted, they did not retreat with the haste, but instead assembled into a timber thicket. And the captain's suspicions about the ambush was proved correct when try of waiting as many as 70 Comanche emerged, led by Yellow Wolf. The Rangers were facing a lot of them, one of whom Jack Hayes had encountered in the battle before. Now, Yellow Wolf and his close friends, cousin to Buffalo Hump, had earned status of a warrior earlier when they led expedition to raid a settlement in Guadalupe Valley. Then, in 1835, they led 300 Comanche warriors in attack against Parral in Sierra Madre accidentally, and there was the great raid in the revenge for the council house fought. Now, Yellow Wolf led his warriors in a charge. Previously, Hayes would have ordered his men to rush back to the creek and make it stand there by using whatever protection the bank offered. This time, though, the Rangers remained where they were. Perplexed, Comanche halt. Maybe they were the ones about to be trapped. Several long-range shots were exchanged. Then the warriors retreated up the hill and out of sight. Now, Captain Hayes led his men forward. He had noted a steep base to the hill and that believed when the Rangers reached it, they would not be visible to the Comanches. When they arrived at the hidden base, Hayes speared his horse and his men followed him around and up that hill. The Indians were startled when the Texans suddenly appeared on their flank. Rifle shot rattled their ranks until they recovered and rode down off the hill. Now, Rangers gave pursuit, one on level ground, and the Comanches turned and attacked. They confident because they clearly outnumbered their advisors. In confusion, a close combat, no man that day took the time to consider that the Rangers were alternating tactics in history or the West was being changed by Yankee inventor and a band of frontiersmen. Right, Frederick Wilkinson, the legend begins. Mounted combat was starting down a new path, but those Rangers were probably wondering if they had placed too much trust in the 5 shooters. They had not. Now, Comanche found themselves perplexed and stalled again. They sensibly assumed they had fired their rifles. The white men had little left besides their one-shot pistols and knives and could not withstand overwhelming foes. Now the warriors changed. The Rangers aimed their pistols and fired. After the first volley, they fired another one and another one. The saddles empty fast as warriors are jerked out of them. Now more angry than confused, the Indians rallied and charged again. Now Sam Walker and Mark Gillespie had gotten so far out in front and surrendered by surrounded by warriors and thrusting lance, but their repeating pistols helped them break free. The other rangers kept their horses anchored and fired their Colts. Peterson stopped and stunned Comanche when riveting fire had taken enough of a toll. The warriors turned and hurried away. Hayes shot out for his men to follow. In the chase, the war party of as far as 3 miles until their ammunition and the horses were exhausted. Several rangers had been wounded, and one, Peter Foll, who had come to Texas from Germany and served under Hayes for 3 years, died on the other side of the ledge. And there were 23 dead and 30 wounded Comanches. Not only had the tribe suffered several losses, but the word spread along the frontier that the Rangers had new weapons with them, and relentlessly population increased of the whites, and the tribe would eventually be at an even greater disadvantage in the fight for the land's survival. In his report, A Battle of Walker Creek, dated June 16, 1844, written in San Antonio, Anson Jones, the Texas Secretary of War, Hayes gave a straightforward, just the facts account and concluded, I would take occasion to say that my man eventually no dismay, but on contrary would dare them to come to the charge. The attitude plus a deadliner weapon gave all the enemy of the Texans more to fear. Boy, fight to the last. This is chapter 19. Very soon after it had been born, the Republic of Texas had requests annexed by the United States. But though the administration of Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison, and John Taylor, that did not happen. However, there was finally enough traction during the early days of James Polk administration that Texas was granted statehood, which became official in February 1846. The already displaced government of Santa Anna became exponentially unhappy. There was also a question of what exactly Texas was. The problem, neither the United States Congress Joint Resolution nor Lawrence of Annex containing language specialty. Okay, so Harrison's term lasted only 1 month on Inauguration Day in 1841. The 68-year-old gave an 8,445 word speech on a rainy day, sequentially developed the very bad cold, and died on April 4th. Harrison gave the longest inauguration speech in the United States history and held office for a brief time of any president of the United States. Flying the borders of the new state, the only reference in the general terms to the territory popular included within the rifle belonging to the Republic of Texas, or essentially whatever Texas government said it was. In addition, the new state was to form subject to the adjustment by the United States government of all question of boundaries that may arise with other government, or essential what the United States said it was, ignoring whatever Mexico desires. Texas claimed the Rio Grande as its border, basin in its claim on its territories of Vasquez, while Mexico maintained the border of Natchez River farther north, or it had never recognized Texas independence in the first place. November 1845, President James Polk had secretly sent John Sigel to Mexico City with a monetary offer for the spiked land in other Mexican territories. Mexico was neither inclined nor able to negotiate because of persistent and stable in San Anne's government, population nationalist, sentimental against such sales. With Sigel unsuccessfully, Polk ordered General Zachary Taylor to garrison the southern border of Texas, the Rio Grande. Taylor ignored the Mexican demands, withdrew, and began to build a fort near the river mouth on the Gulf of Mexico. The Mexican government regarded this action as a violation of its sovereignty and immediately prepared for war. But the United States beat it in the punch, declaring war on Mexico on May 12, 1846. During the politics with Mexico, there had been no cessation of raids by Indians, even despite Comanches, by those who fall into the border ruffians category. Now, Texas Rangers captains still had a rise in find ways to pay for a company, but war was a siren call, especially when the fight would be for honor and benefit, not just a republic, but in the entire United States. When a call for troops was sent out, a new unit responding was 1st Texas Mountain Rifle Regiment. The apparently tireless John Coffee Hayes was elected colonel and Sam Walker as lieutenant colonel. Familiar faces like Ben McCullough, Bigfoot Wallace, Warwick Dempsey, as well as others signed up. The regiment, mostly led by Rangers, cut quite a figure when it joined the regular United States Army unit. They display eye-popping horsemanship, could knock a bird eye out of a rifle shot. Dressed with a casual, practical frontiersman, the sport plenty of beard as well as 5-shot pistols, according to Frederick Wilson, to be the United States Army. The Texans demonstrate the value of repeating firearm, and the process brought Sam Colt out of finance ruin and enabled him to reestablish his manufacturing of firearms. The Army also saw a new form of mounting combat, which prepared it for horrendous years ahead fighting the Plain Indians. The Texan skills experience were the great help to General Taylor, who deployed the men as scout quickly strike units. Their adventures and efforts have been told in many tales, and Rangers played an undoubtable role in the outcome of the war. Walker, in potential, became a favorite scout leader, General Taylor, and he engaged in many colorful, successful missions. Highlighted just one, daybreak of September 24th, 1846, found Walker and 200 Texans under his command in the post office, surrounded by the Mexican army during the Battle of Monterrey. No worries, Walker had his men regularly moving about and shouting and shooting, leading the enemy to believe they were one who were outnumbered. The roads worked. Later that morning, as a Mexican officer carrying a white flag approached to say General Pedro Alpide wanted to parley, Walker and the company commander Tom Green agreed to visit the general's headquarters. Now, Pedro was a tad insulted by their appearance. He had expected Zachary Taylor himself to show up after some general between the generals and Walker. It was decided that Pedro would send a message directly to Taylor. The message turned out to be a quest for terms of surrender. On September 25th, the Mexican army left Monterrey. They follow a sort of victory laps for Jack Hayes and Sam Walker, who traveled to New Orleans, Galveston, and San Antonio, where the memory of Robert Gillespie was honored. The veterans, though still just 31, had died on the 23rd from 23 from wounds suffered that day during the fight of Monterey. In November, Walker made his way north. He had been summoned by Washington, D.C. James Polk wanted to meet him. This get together may have been the first time sitting president met with a Texas Ranger. There were business to attend in New York when Samuel Colt hoped to receive the Rangers' endorsement of Patterson pistols with first-hand knowledge of the weapon's efficacy. Walker was glad to give it, and his support carried enough weight that Polk and William Mercy, the Secretary of War, cut through the red tape and had financial government purchase 1,000 of pistols, and the revolver became known as the Walker Colt. The Celebrate Ranger could not dilly-dally in New York or Washington, though there was still a war going on. March 24th, 1847, Walker was in Kentucky, having raised 100 or so recruits along the way, served under him. 6 weeks later, he went back to Mexico, Veracruz, with close to 100 men. The rest of that spring and summer, he was involved in various fights as the armies under General Taylor and Winfield Scott drove deeper into the enemy territory. Walker's toughest fight would happen the fall, October 9th. His company was attached to the force of soldiers from Ohio, Indiana, Louisiana, serving under General Joseph Lane. As Americans near the spy report of Santa Anna himself was in town, Walker. After the continuous service of Mexican War, Lane was appointed the first governor of Oregon Territory. When Oregon was admitted to the state of 1859, Lane was elected one of the first 2 United States senators. In 1860 presidential election, Lane was nominated for the vice president of pro-slavery Southern Wing, a Democratic Party. John C. Breckinridge, running mate, Lane views subsequently sympathized for the Confederate States of America in the Civil War, and apparently end his politics career. However, one of his sons was later elected as United States representative, and a grandson became United Senator, making Lane the head honcho of one of Oregon's most prominent politics family. I'm going to stop there, and I'll read more another time. Hey, thanks for all coming. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys all later. Have a good Friday night. Bye.